In the tranquil solitude of rural Montana, the last slivers of daylight painted long dramatic shadows across the winding country road as Daniel Johnson's pickup truck hummed, carrying him home after a grueling day at the veterinary clinic. What began as a routine drive transformed into a moment of profound destiny when he tragically discovered a tiny orphaned bobcat kitten, barely clinging to life beside its lifeless mother. But it wasn't Daniel who would forge the deepest, most inexplicable bond with this fragile wild creature. It was Buddy, their gentle golden retriever, who seemed to recognize a flicker of something special in those first, uncertain, heart-wrenching days. As the bobcat, whom they affectionately named Max, miraculously grew from a fragile, mewling kitten into a powerful, agile predator, the connection between these unlikely companions deepened in ways that utterly defied logical explanation, stirring a sense of wonder in the Johnson family. Then one day, a wave of despair washed over them when Max vanished into the vast, untamed forest. The Johnsons sadly resigned themselves to the thought that their extraordinary chapter had abruptly ended. Little did they know that a mysterious, insistent tap on their window 3 days later would unravel an astonishing series of events, a testament to a bond stronger than the call of the wild. This is the unbelievable story of an unbreakable connection between a wild bobcat and a loyal golden retriever. A tale that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the delicate boundaries between wild and domestic animals. Before we delve into this incredible story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of the animal kingdom. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories that are sure to touch your soul. The late afternoon sun cast elongated, eerie shadows across the winding country road as Daniel Johnson steered his trusty pickup truck homeward, the weariness of a long day at the veterinary clinic etched onto his face. The crisp October air carried a distinct, chilling premonition of the approaching winter in rural Montana. The maple trees that lined the roadside blazed with brilliant hues of fiery orange and deep crimson, creating a breathtaking yet melancholic canopy overhead. Daniel yearned for the quiet sanctuary of his home, for the comforting presence of his beloved wife Sarah and their bright-eyed 12-year-old daughter Emma. Life on their sprawling 60-acre property just outside of Whitefish offered a precious peace and an intimate connection to the raw beauty of nature. A solace the family deeply cherished, especially after Daniel's demanding days tending to the ailments of the local farmers and ranchers' animals. As he carefully rounded a bend in the road, approximately 2 miles from the comforting familiarity of his home, a small dark shape on the shoulder of the road caught his practiced eye. Most people lost in their own thoughts might have unknowingly driven past without a second glance. But 2 decades as a compassionate veterinarian had keenly trained Daniel to notice even the slightest anomaly, the subtle presence of an animal in distress even from a considerable distance. He gently slowed his truck, the tires crunching softly on the gravel as he pulled over. What he discovered sent a cold wave of dread washing over him. A female bobcat lay utterly motionless on the unforgiving gravel, tragically struck by a vehicle. Daniel's experienced heart sank. He had witnessed enough wildlife trauma to recognize the chilling stillness of recent death, perhaps only a few hours past. He was about to reluctantly return to his truck to contact the local wildlife authorities, the weight of the loss heavy on his shoulders, when a faint, almost imperceptible mewing sound pierced the quiet stillness. At first, a desperate flicker of hope ignited within him. Could the mother somehow still be alive? But as he cautiously approached the edge of the road, his heart aching with apprehension, he realized the fragile sound was emanating from the tall, whispering grass just off the shoulder. There, huddled in a tight, pathetic ball, lay a tiny bobcat kitten no more than 2 weeks old, its delicate spotted fur barely distinguishable from the dry, rustling autumn leaves. "Oh, you poor little one," Daniel whispered, his experienced gaze quickly assessing the fragile creature. The kitten was alarmingly dehydrated, its tiny body trembling, and it likely hadn't nursed since its mother's tragic demise. How it had managed to survive even this short time was nothing short of a heartbreaking miracle. Daniel knew with a heavy certainty that the chances of survival for such a young orphan bobcat were devastatingly slim, especially with the relentless approach of the harsh Montana winter. The local wildlife rehabilitation centers, already stretched to their breaking point, were woefully underfunded and overcrowded. In that pivotal moment, Daniel made a swift decision, one that he instinctively knew might be met with controversy, yet felt undeniably right in the deepest core of his being. With the utmost care, his large, gentle hands scooped up the tiny, defenseless creature, which was far too weak to offer any resistance, and cradled it within the warmth of his jacket. "Let's get you home, little guy," he murmured, casting one last sorrowful glance at the lifeless mother bobcat. He would call the Forest Service about her remains as soon as he reached the sanctuary of his home. "I promise," he vowed to the tiny, trembling life nestled against his chest. "I'll do right by you." "Daniel James Johnson, have you completely lost your ever-loving mind?" Sarah's voice, usually a melodious comfort, now carried a sharp edge of utter disbelief as she stared aghast at the tiny bobcat kitten her husband had gently placed on a soft towel on their familiar kitchen counter. "We absolutely cannot keep a wild bobcat, Daniel. It's illegal without proper permits, not to mention incredibly dangerous." Daniel, his heart filled with a fierce protectiveness, for the vulnerable creature, had already prepared a small amount of kitten formula, carefully warming it to the perfect life-sustaining temperature. I know, honey." He soothed his voice, laced with a plea for understanding. But Sarah, just look at him. He wouldn't have lasted another hour out there. The rehab center is completely overwhelmed. They're already struggling with those 3 orphaned bear cubs from that devastating forest fire last month. Their bright-eyed daughter Emma, her youthful face a mixture of concern and wide-eyed fascination, peered cautiously at the tiny, exotic creature. "Is he going to die, Dad?" she whispered, her voice filled with a childlike fear. "Not if I can help it, sweetie," Daniel replied gently, carefully filling a small syringe with the warm formula. "I've treated bobcat kittens before at the clinic. He's severely dehydrated and desperately hungry, but otherwise, he seems remarkably healthy." Sarah sighed, her initial, understandable resistance slowly beginning to soften as she watched her compassionate husband tenderly feed the fragile bobcat. 20 years of marriage to a veterinarian had long ago taught her that their home would never be without animals in dire need. Their current menagerie already included 3 rescued barn cats, with their own unique quirks, a magnificent one-eyed former racehorse named Captain, who held a special place in their hearts, and their beloved 5-year-old golden retriever Buddy, who was currently observing the unfolding scene from a respectful distance. His intelligent, warm brown eyes fixed intently on the tiny, unexpected newcomer. "I've already called Mike at the Forest Service." Daniel continued, referring to his longtime friend and trusted colleague who worked as a dedicated wildlife conservation officer. "He's bringing over the temporary wildlife rehabilitation permits in the morning. If the little guy miraculously survives the night, we'll carefully evaluate whether he can eventually be released back into the wild." Emma, her initial apprehension replaced by an insatiable curiosity, had moved closer to the counter. "What's his name going to be?" she asked, her voice filled with innocent anticipation. "Emma," Sarah cautioned gently. "We are absolutely not keeping him as a pet. He's a wild animal. But he needs a name while he's here." Emma insisted, her young brow furrowed with concern. "We can't just keep calling him Bobcat." Daniel couldn't help but smile at his daughter's undeniable logic and her tender heart. "How about Max?" he suggested thoughtfully. "Short for maximum effort, because that's exactly what it's going to take to get this little fellow back on his tiny paws." "Max," Emma repeated, nodding her enthusiastic approval. I think he likes it." As if in direct response to his newfound name, the tiny bobcat kitten let out a small squeaky sound, a fragile peep of contentment as he finished the last drops of formula and curled up on the soft towel, his tiny sides rising and falling with exhausted yet hopeful breaths. Buddy, who had been patiently watching the entire interaction from the doorway, his tail giving an occasional gentle thump against the floor, chose that precise moment to approach the counter. Standing on his hind legs, his front paws resting delicately on the edge, he sniffed the tiny newcomer with gentle curiosity. To everyone's utter surprise, he then let out a soft, almost mournful whine, and gently, tenderly licked the top of the kitten's small head. "Well, would you just look at that?" Daniel murmured, a sense of profound wonder filling his voice. "Buddy's already adopted him." Sarah couldn't help but smile, a warmth spreading through her, despite her initial misgivings. "Fine," she conceded, her voice softening. "But this is strictly temporary, Daniel. Very temporary." Neither of them, in that unassuming moment, could have possibly foreseen how this simple act of compassion would set in motion an extraordinary friendship, a bond that would utterly defy the conventional boundaries between the wild and the domestic, a profound connection that would span years and bring unexpected, immeasurable joy into their lives. The next few weeks were a delicate dance between hope and fear for little Max. Daniel's extensive veterinary expertise was put to the ultimate test as he meticulously created a strict feeding schedule, vigilantly monitored the kitten's fragile health, and gradually, patiently introduced solid food. The entire Johnson family rallied around Max, each member playing a crucial role in his care. Emma, in particular, took an intense interest in meticulously recording his every weight gain and developmental milestone in a special journal she lovingly decorated with her own charming drawings of bobcats. But what truly astonished them all was Buddy's unwavering, almost maternal behavior. The gentle golden retriever, known for his sweet and placid temperament, appointed himself Max's silent guardian. He would lie for hours on end beside the makeshift enclosure they had carefully set up in a quiet corner of their cozy living room, occasionally nudging the soft blankets with his nose as if to check on the tiny, vulnerable creature within. Whenever Max was gently brought out for his feeding or supervised exercise, Buddy would watch with an intense, unwavering focus, his tail giving a soft, reassuring thump against the floor whenever the small bobcat made even the slightest progress. "I've truly never witnessed anything quite like it," Sarah remarked one quiet evening as they watched Buddy carefully nudge Max with his large, soft nose, gently encouraging the wobbly kitten to take a few more tentative steps across the familiar living room floor. "It's as if he instinctively knows that Max desperately needs a friend." By the time December's chill had firmly settled over the Montana landscape, Max had grown significantly, his once fragile body now displaying a newfound strength and agility, allowing him to begin cautiously exploring more of the house under their watchful eyes. Daniel and Sarah had numerous heartfelt discussions about the bobcat's uncertain future. While their initial plan had been to release him back into the wild with the arrival of spring, but they were becoming increasingly concerned about his remarkably close bond with both humans and especially with Buddy. "The problem is, he's imprinting on us, and particularly on Buddy," Daniel explained to Mike during one of his regular visits to check on Max's progress. At this rate, he won't develop the natural wariness of humans that he desperately needs to survive in the unforgiving wilderness. Mike, a burly man with a thick salt and pepper beard and decades of invaluable experience in wildlife management etched into his weathered face, watched with a thoughtful expression as Max playfully pounced on Buddy's enthusiastically wagging tail. "You're in a real tough spot, Dan," he admitted, his voice filled with concern. He's far too habituated for a normal, successful release. But keeping a full-grown bobcat, no matter how gentle he seems now, simply isn't a realistic or safe long-term option. "What about a middle ground?" Sarah suggested, her voice filled with a hopeful practicality. "Our property directly borders the vast national forest land. What if we gradually transition him to living outdoors, but still provide some level of support?" Mike scratched his grizzled beard thoughtfully, his keen eyes considering the possibilities. "A soft release, you mean? It could potentially work, especially with your extensive acreage. We'd need to set up proper, secure structures, maybe a feeding station that gradually gets moved further and further away from the house. But it would require a significant amount of time and unwavering commitment from all of you. We've already got plenty of both invested," Daniel replied resolutely, his gaze softening as he watched Emma sit cross-legged on the floor, playfully dangling a colorful feathered toy for Max, while Buddy looked on with an air of proud approval. And so began the next delicate phase of Max's extraordinary journey with the compassionate Johnson family. Daniel, with his skilled hands, built a spacious and secure outdoor enclosure that allowed Max to experience the natural sights, sounds, and smells of the surrounding environment while still providing him with essential shelter and protection. They embarked on a carefully planned program to gradually introduce the growing bobcat to the vital skills he would need to survive independently in the wild. By the following spring, Max had undergone a remarkable transformation. His once fluffy, kittenish fur had been replaced by the striking, distinctive spotted coat of his species, and his once tiny, fragile body had developed into a lean, powerful form, hinting at the formidable predator he was destined to become. Yet despite these significant physical changes, his profound bond with Buddy remained undeniably strong, an inexplicable connection that continued to defy all expectations. The most remarkable aspect of their unique relationship unfolded during the daily walks the family took along the winding 5-mile trail that snaked through their sprawling property. What had initially begun as short, closely supervised excursions in the immediate vicinity of the house gradually extended further and further into the dense forest. Max would walk contentedly alongside Buddy, occasionally darting playfully into the underbrush to instinctively practice his burgeoning hunting skills before always returning to the reassuring presence of the gentle golden retriever's side. It's like they have their own secret language. Emma observed one breathtaking April afternoon as they watched Max and Buddy explore a vibrant meadow bursting with the colorful blossoms of spring wildflowers. "Did you see how Max suddenly froze and Buddy immediately stopped too? They're communicating with each other somehow." Daniel nodded, utterly amazed by the intuitive, almost telepathic communication that seemed to flow effortlessly between the two unlikely friends. "Buddy's teaching him in his own quiet way," he mused. "Notice how he patiently waits while Max practices his stalking techniques, but he never lets him stray too far away. He's being a true mentor." As the warmth of summer approached, bringing with it the promise of long sun-drenched days, the Johnsons made the momentous decision to begin leaving the door to Max's secure enclosure open, allowing him the freedom to come and go as he pleased. The first night he didn't return, a heavy blanket of worry settled over the family. Sarah found Emma in her bedroom, her young face streaked with tears. "He's gone, Mom." She sobbed, her voice filled with a profound sense of loss. "Max is gone." Sarah sat gently on the edge of her daughter's bed, stroking her soft hair with a comforting hand. "Honey," she said softly, her own heart aching with a bittersweet sadness. "We always knew this day would eventually come. Max is a wild animal, and part of truly loving him means allowing him to be who he's meant to be." What they hadn't anticipated, however, was the insistent, almost urgent tap on the kitchen window 3 days later. Buddy, who had been uncharacteristically subdued and restless during Max's absence, suddenly perked up his ears, alert, racing to the back door with an excited, joyful bark. There, peering in through the glass, his golden eyes bright and alert, was Max. "Well, I'll be damned." Daniel laughed, a wave of immense relief washing over him as he quickly opened the door. Max sauntered back into the familiar warmth of their kitchen, as if he had never left, rubbing affectionately against Buddy before pointedly inspecting his old food bowl with an expectant gaze. Emma's face lit up with pure, unadulterated joy. "He came back, he remembered us. And he's definitely hungry." Sarah added, unable to completely hide her own profound relief, as she happily filled his bowl with the special, carefully balanced diet Daniel had formulated for him. This unexpected return established a new, unique pattern in their extraordinary relationship with Max. He would disappear for days, sometimes even weeks at a time, living the independent life of a true wild bobcat, exploring the vast expanse of the surrounding forest. But he would always eventually return, announcing his presence with that familiar, insistent tap on a window or door, seeking out his old steadfast friend Buddy, and accepting the family's quiet affection entirely on his own terms. 3 years passed in this remarkable rhythm of presence and absence. Max grew into a magnificent adult bobcat, nearly twice Buddy's size, his powerful limbs, and the characteristic short bobbed tail, a testament to his wild nature. His visits became less frequent, but no less special, particularly for Buddy, who would greet his returning friend with the same enthusiastic joy and unwavering loyalty each time. The Johnson family's deep respect for Max's wild spirit only deepened over time. They never attempted to restrain him during his visits, and were always careful not to treat him as a mere pet. He was a wild neighbor who chose of his own volition to maintain a unique connection with them, an extraordinary arrangement that seemed to bring a profound sense of peace and fulfillment to everyone involved. It was a crisp November morning, the air carrying the sharp scent of impending winter, when Max made one of his now rare appearances. Daniel had just returned from his morning routine of feeding the horses when he noticed the familiar tawny silhouette sitting patiently at the very edge of their yard, his intelligent golden eyes intently watching the house. Buddy, now a dignified 8 years old, with subtle touches of gray beginning to appear around his gentle muzzle, sensed his old friend's presence and rushed outside, his tail wagging with undiminished enthusiasm. The two unlikely companions greeted each other with their familiar, heartwarming rituals, Buddy offering a playful bow and Max gently batting at his ear with a soft paw. Daniel called for Sarah and Emma to come and witness this precious reunion, knowing how much they treasured these increasingly infrequent moments of connection. "He looks different somehow," Emma remarked quietly as they watched from the porch, now a thoughtful 15-year-old with her father's keen eye for animal behavior. Daniel nodded, noticing the same subtle shift in Max's demeanor. The bobcat seemed more restless than usual, repeatedly taking a few steps toward the dense tree line of the forest, before invariably returning to Buddy's side. "I think he wants Buddy to follow him." "Oh, must," Sarah said softly, voicing the unspoken thought that hung in the crisp air between them. Daniel hesitated, a flicker of concern crossing his face. While Max had never displayed even a hint of aggression toward any of them, he was still at his core a wild predator, driven by instincts and behaviors that couldn't always be predicted or fully understood. "I'm not entirely sure that's such a good idea." "Dad, look at Buddy." Emma pointed out, her voice filled with gentle urgency. The aging golden retriever was undeniably eager to accompany his old friend, his warm brown eyes turning back to the family with a pleading, almost childlike expression. After a brief, hushed family conference, their deep trust in the unique bond between the two animals ultimately swayed their decision. Daniel, ever the cautious veterinarian, grabbed his well-worn medical bag, a habitual precaution whenever venturing into the unpredictable embrace of the forest. And they set off a respectful distance behind the unusual pair. Max led them deeper into the woods than they typically ventured on their familiar walks beyond their usual trail, and into a densely wooded section of their property that bordered the vast, untamed expanse of the national forest. "He's definitely taking us somewhere specific." Daniel observed, his voice hushed with a growing sense of anticipation as Max paused occasionally, his intelligent gaze flicking back to ensure they were still following. After about 20 minutes of silent trekking through the whispering pines and rustling underbrush, Max disappeared into a small, secluded clearing sheltered by a moss-covered fallen log and a thick tapestry of ferns and low-lying shrubs. Buddy followed without a moment's hesitation, his tail giving a soft, excited thump against the damp earth. When the family cautiously approached the hidden clearing, they were met with an astonishing, heart-stopping sight. There, nestled in a well-concealed den, beneath the protective shelter of the fallen log, lay 3 tiny bobcat kittens, their spotted fur and innocent blue-gray eyes marking them as being only a few weeks old. Max stood protectively nearby, his powerful body radiating a fierce paternal vigilance, watching them carefully, but making no move to prevent their cautious approach. "He's a father," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe and a profound sense of wonder. "He's brought us to meet his family." What happened next unfolded with a tenderness that moved them all to tears. Buddy, his aging body surprisingly agile, approached the tiny kittens with extraordinary gentleness, lying down slowly beside the den. To everyone's utter amazement, Max nudged his precious offspring toward the golden retriever, one by tiny, wobbly one. The curious kittens, their instincts overriding any fear, tottered over to Buddy, who began to carefully lick and groom them with the same gentle affection he had shown Max years before, as if they were his own cherished puppies. "It's like he's introducing his children to their beloved uncle," Emma said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Or perhaps," Daniel suggested, his veterinarian's mind already instinctively assessing the health of the tiny newborns, "he's asking his old friend to help protect them." A knot of concern tightened in his chest. "I don't see any sign of a mother. I wonder if something tragic happened to her." As if confirming Daniel's unspoken fears, Max moved closer to Buddy and the vulnerable kittens, settling down beside them in a way that seemed to telegraph an undeniable trust and a profound reliance. "Daniel," Sarah said quietly, her eyes meeting his with a shared understanding, I think he's brought them to us for help." In that poignant moment, standing in the quiet reverence of the forest clearing, the Johnson family truly understood the immeasurable depth of the bond they had forged with this wild creature. Max wasn't just visiting. He was seeking aid, seeking solace, seeking support from the only other family he had ever truly known. The weeks that followed brought a new set of challenges, intertwined with moments of profound and unexpected joy. After careful observation and a thorough assessment, Daniel sadly confirmed their growing suspicion. The mother bobcat was indeed absent and unlikely to return. With the invaluable guidance of Mike from the Forest Service and the expedited acquisition of the necessary emergency wildlife fostering permits, the Johnson family established a delicate support system for Max and his vulnerable kittens. They constructed a sheltered feeding station near the den, ensuring it provided both sustenance and protection from the elements, and diligently took turns with Daniel making daily visits to discreetly check on the kitten's health and well-being. They were meticulously careful to maintain a respectful distance, acutely aware of the critical need to prevent the young bobcats from becoming overly habituated to human presence. A delicate balance that proved to be far easier said than done. Buddy, in his own quiet and remarkable way, became an unexpected co-parent. He insisted on accompanying them on every visit to the den, spending hours lying patiently near Max and the kittens, his gentle presence, a constant source of reassurance. He would play softly with the tiny bobcats, groom their delicate fur with meticulous care, and even appeared to be instinctively teaching them certain subtle behaviors, mirroring Max's movements and vocalizations. Wildlife biologists who learned of the extraordinary and unprecedented arrangement visited the Johnson property to meticulously document this rare and captivating cross-species relationship. In all my years studying wild felids, I've never encountered anything remotely like this, remarked Dr. Eleanor Harper, a renowned feline conservation specialist who traveled from the University of Montana to observe the unique family dynamic. It completely challenges our conventional understanding of wildlife rehabilitation and the potential for profound cross-species bonding. Winter gradually settled its icy grip over the Montana landscape, blanketing the forest in a pristine layer of white snow. The bobcat kittens, under the combined devoted care of their fiercely protective father and their surprisingly nurturing golden retriever uncle, grew stronger and more agile with each passing day. By January, they were venturing further and further from the sheltered den, instinctively learning the crucial art of hunting under Max's watchful guidance. While Buddy observed attentively from a respectful distance, his tail giving occasional encouraging wags. One snowy afternoon, Emma, her scientific curiosity piqued, convinced her parents to allow her to set up a discreet wildlife camera near the feeding station. "I want to capture what truly happens when we're not there," she explained earnestly, "for my science project on interspecies relationships." The footage they cautiously retrieved a week later left them utterly speechless, their hearts swelling with a profound sense of wonder. In the quiet, undisturbed moments when humans were absent, Max and Buddy engaged in playful behaviors rarely if ever witnessed between wild and domestic animals. The gentle golden retriever would initiate playful games of chase in the soft snow, while Max, with an almost patient demeanor, would demonstrate intricate hunting techniques, not just to his inquisitive kittens, but seemingly to Buddy as well. In one particularly remarkable sequence, the two adult animals worked together seamlessly to gently herd the rambunctious kittens back toward the safety of the den, as a lone coyote cautiously passed nearby. Their co-parenting. Sarah marveled, her voice hushed with awe as they reviewed the incredible video footage. They're raising those precious kittens together. As winter reluctantly gave way to the vibrant promise of spring, the bittersweet reality of another inevitable transition began to weigh heavily on them all, particularly on young Emma. The bobcat kittens, now nearly 6 months old, were rapidly growing more independent, their reliance on supplemental feeding significantly decreasing. Max was taking them on increasingly longer excursions away from the familiar den, teaching them the crucial skills they would need to thrive in the wild. "They'll be leaving soon, won't they, Dad?" Emma asked one poignant April evening as they made their daily trek to check on the bobcat family, her voice tinged with a familiar sadness. Daniel nodded, placing a comforting arm around his daughter's shoulders. "That's the natural order of things, honey. Young bobcats eventually disperse to establish their own territories." Will we ever see them again? She asked, her gaze fixed on the empty space where the kittens had so recently played. Max came back. He gently reminded her, and we've given his kittens positive associations with this place without making them dependent on us. That's the greatest gift we could offer them. A chance at a truly wild life, but with a safe harbor if they ever need it. By early summer, the Bobcat family had indeed moved on. The cozy den stood empty, a poignant reminder of the extraordinary chapter they had shared. And the feeding station remained untouched, a silent testament to their successful intervention. Buddy, with his uncanny understanding, seemed to sense the change. He no longer pulled insistently toward the familiar forest clearing during their walks, his routine of peaceful farm life resuming. Though he would occasionally stand at the edge of the yard, his wise old eyes gazing wistfully into the dense woods, as if patiently waiting for the return of his unusual friend. 2 more years gently passed. Buddy, now a venerable 10 years old, had slowed down considerably, his once vibrant muzzle now completely dusted with gray, and his boundless energy somewhat diminished by the aches of arthritis in his hips. Daniel had started him on medication that provided some relief, but the joyful days of racing through the forest were now a cherished memory. Max's visits had become increasingly rare, brief appearances every few months, where he would spend a quiet hour or two with Buddy before silently disappearing back into the wild embrace of the forest. The Johnson family treasured these fleeting reunions, seeing them as a powerful confirmation that their unconventional approach to raising the orphaned bobcat had ultimately succeeded in giving him the best of both worlds. It was the first snowfall of a crisp November when Emma, home for her first semester at Montana State University, where she was enthusiastically studying wildlife biology, noticed Buddy's peculiar behavior. The aging dog stood insistently at the kitchen door, whining softly despite having just been outside. "What is it, boy?" she asked, her heart filled with a familiar warmth as she opened the door again. Buddy immediately trotted out into the fresh, pristine snow, looking back at her expectantly, his tail giving a gentle, hopeful wag. Emma, pulling her warm jacket tighter against the sudden chill, followed him. Buddy led her to the very edge of their yard and then paused, his unwavering attention fixed on the dark tree line. There, barely visible through the swirling snowflakes, was a familiar, unmistakable silhouette. "Dad, Mom," Emma called back to the cozy warmth of the house, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "It's Max." The magnificent bobcat emerged from the sheltering forest, his tawny coat a striking contrast against the pure white landscape. But he wasn't alone. Following closely behind him, almost fully grown, was one of his offspring instantly recognizable. By a distinctive pattern of unique spots above its right eye, a detail Daniel had meticulously documented in his detailed notes years before. As the family watched in quiet awe from the porch, Max approached Buddy with the same gentle greeting they had witnessed countless times before. Then, in a truly remarkable gesture, he stepped aside as if deliberately inviting his grown kitten to do the same. After a moment of cautious hesitation, the younger bobcat tentatively approached Buddy, who remained perfectly still, his tail giving a slow, gentle wag of welcome. "He's introducing his grown child to Buddy." Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He remembered. In that profound moment, standing in the gentle silence of the first snowfall, the Johnson family witnessed the continuation of a legacy they had unknowingly helped to create. A delicate, extraordinary bridge between the wild and domestic worlds, built on a foundation of unwavering trust, mutual respect, and an inexplicable, enduring bond of friendship. Over the following years, Max continued his occasional visits, sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by what they firmly believed was the same offspring. When Buddy, at the venerable age of 13, became too frail to venture outside during the harsh Montana winters, they were astonished and deeply touched to find Max sitting patiently at the living room window, tapping gently with a paw, as if politely asking to come inside. Against all conventional wisdom, but trusting implicitly in the unique relationship they had nurtured for over a decade, they allowed the magnificent Bobcat brief, closely supervised visits with his old friend. Max would lie quietly beside Buddy's comfortable bed, their heads resting close together in silent communion, before returning to the wild that remained his true and untamed home. When Buddy finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the remarkable age of nearly 14, the family buried him on a gentle knoll overlooking the vast forest he had so loved, marking his grave with a simple, heartfelt stone. Daniel swore he caught a fleeting glimpse of Max watching from the distant tree line during the small private ceremony, though the others hadn't seen him. A week later, Sarah discovered something truly remarkable. Placed carefully on Buddy's grave, a freshly caught rabbit meticulously positioned at the base of the memorial stone. Beside it, clear in the soft earth, was the unmistakable print of a large bobcat paw. "He brought Buddy a gift," she told Daniel and Emma that evening, her eyes filled with a mixture of profound sadness and a deep sense of peace. A final goodbye. The Johnson family continued their life on the Montana farm, watching the seasons gracefully change and eventually welcoming a new golden retriever puppy named Scout into their loving home. The extraordinary experiences they had shared had taught them a profound and enduring lesson about the boundless capacity for connection that transcends the artificial boundaries humans so often erect between the wild and the tame, between the natural world and ourselves. Max's legacy lived on, not just in the occasional fleeting sightings of bobcats on their property, some perhaps his descendants, but in Emma's passionate pursuit of wildlife research, in Daniel's even more compassionate approach to veterinary medicine, and in the incredible story they shared with their friends and neighbors. It served as a constant heartwarming reminder that with patience, unwavering respect, and unconditional love, the most unlikely friendships can flourish, bringing unexpected joy and teaching us the true, profound meaning of coexistence. And on still winter evenings, when the first delicate snowflakes fall silently on the Montana forest, the Johnsons still sometimes catch a fleeting glimpse of a tawny shadow with a distinctive pattern of spots pausing momentarily at the edge of their yard, as if remembering old friends and the extraordinary family that once in a remarkable twist of fate became his own. Music fades gently. A valuable lesson. The incredible story of Max and Buddy beautifully illustrates the profound capacity for connection and even love that can exist between different species, even those we perceive as vastly different. It teaches us the importance of empathy, respect for the wild, and the unexpected ways in which nature can surprise and enrich our lives. By opening our hearts and minds, we can discover extraordinary bonds that challenge our preconceived notions and remind us of the interconnectedness of all living things. We would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this incredible story. Please share your comments below. And if you enjoyed this heartwarming tale, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of the animal kingdom. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy this story? Please rate it in the comments below.